Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say at the end, but needles to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful July the 19th, 2019. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, is hot and sticky icky down here. I feel like one of those honey buns that you buy at the convenience store, across the counter. But I think I'm that sweet also.
Well, you might be even sweeter, Big C. They say chocolate is the sweetest taste in the universe. We want to say that everybody's having a great summer, at least on the West Coast. Our thoughts and prayers are still for a lot of people suffering from heat, especially throughout the East Coast and in the Midwest region. So please stay hydrated, stay in as much shade as possible. A lot of things going on in baseball. Football, everybody's reporting in the camps, looking forward to that. And then baseball, there's still a lot of talk about baseball as teams are going to make some moves and try to push for the playoffs. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Still on our vacation tour of Big C Sports, and we just love talking sports and politics and all's fair in love and war. I really look forward to it. I do want to just say, as we always do, Big C, I want to give out this hotline number, and then I'll bring you on. But we know people going through issues, no matter what it may be. You can still reach out to get some help. You can call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. Now, Big C, I do want to finish up yesterday because you said yesterday, and I know it because I wrote it down. You said that you good old boys down south use a lot of butter for everything. But I came up with this invention. Does butter work for chapstick so I don't have to keep spending $1 on chapstick? Can I just use butter, Big C? Your thoughts?
Oh, yes, it can, Charlton. It has those oily products in there. And, it's a natural ingredient.
Yes.
Well, when you think about all this stuff you buy over the counter, Charlton, to put on your body, on your face and everything, that has additives in it. It's not all natural from Mother Earth. Butter is, you get it out of animals. It's the fat that they produce when they produce milk. So butter works on everything on the body. Butter does the body good.
Butter does a body good. There's always black inventions. Now, I'm not saying we invented butter, Big C, but we are going to try to invent ways to use it. The butter works so good on my face. I mean, I got to get used to the taste, but I think some of my wrinkles went away. I also know that butter can be used, don't laugh, but it can be used for the car tires. Instead of buying that Armor All, I put some butter all over my tires, Big C. They're shining pretty good, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you got to watch who's going to come up there and try to lick on your tires, Charlton. You know the other stuff will attract a dog raising his leg, but you might get some people feeling hungry when they see your car rolling by.
Yeah, that's all fair level war. Leave it up to black man. We created a lot of things. The real McCoy was created by African-American men. That's how they test steel. They put acid on it. If it passes the acid test, they say that's the real McCoy. And speaking of the real McCoy, I know we started yesterday with our talk about what's going on in football and all the camps, and then baseball's going strong too. I want to just there's something that I want to touch on before we even get into sports, because this time of year, we just said there's a heat index, and I know some people don't believe in global warming because they don't believe in science. But an ex-New York Giants football player passed away. Mark Petrie, he died from heat stroke. He was only 32 years old. I believe he was in an Arkansas hospital, Big C, but 32 years old, whether you're 22 years old or 92 years old, the heat is something that we all gotta pay attention to it. And double days are coming up, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the heat index is always real. In the summer, a lot of people get distracted by not hydrating when they're outside doing excessive work.
Yeah.
I know that's one of the faults that I have. I'm outside and I'm always wearing sweats. when I'm outside doing work, and I come inside and I'm drenched. But I try to constantly hydrate. I go back to that old-fashioned thing called water hose.
Yep.
I just drink out of it.
Yeah.
I don't need to go get a bottle of Gatorade. I don't need to get a bottle of water.
Yeah.
I just need to put some liquid in my body, and people need to pay attention to that, Charlton. We all think that we're stronger than what we are, but the organs, once they start to suffer, they will shut down.
Yeah, and I know that some people, for example, if they have, I think people who have sickle cell trait, they are subject to heat. It makes them act all crazy, and a lot of times people deal with that. And then I know of, one time I even got heat stroke myself. I was painting on the top of the house, and just being a knucklehead, it was about 25 years ago, but I was on top of the house and I was painting. Now, it was about 100 degrees, but when you're young, you think you're invincible. But I do know I slept almost the entire next day, and my doctor said I had heat stroke. And every now and then, when it gets super hot, it still affects me, Big C. That make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, everybody needs to pay attention to it. I know a lot of athletes are going into training camp. Athletes work out year-round.
Yeah.
And we just had the World Cup going over in France, and they had record high temperatures over there. Those athletes, those female athletes, made sure that they stayed good and hydrated, running all over the soccer field. We just had Wimbledon. Wimbledon had a high heat index while they were over there, Charlton. Even the baseball team with the Yankees and the Red Sox.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that athletes stay on top of. And that's what the medical and training staff is all about, doing that. But the layman person, they suffer heat index strokes, Charlton, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And they need to be more conscientious of their surroundings and their body temperature when they're outside for an excessive amount of time.
Let me get your feeling, because I know you make a lot of fun of West Coast sports, and I know double days are coming up for a lot of programs right around August, Big C, whether you're college or, NFL just started. A lot of high school too. Is it in the South because you sweat more because of the humidity? And the West Coast is more of a dry heat. But I may be ignorant when I say this, but I really don't recall a time lately when someone from the West Coast was reported as having a heat stroke or a heat fatality. It seems to always be an East Coast or Southern thing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, Charlton, it happens all over. The reason why you get it from the South is because people in the South pay more attention to sports, and especially football, than what they do on the West Coast.
Yeah.
You think about the media days that you're hearing about going on in the SEC, the ACC, and even in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
What do you hear about a media day in the Pac-12? You really don't. No one cares. No, you don't hear about it in the Big West, the Big Sky. You don't hear about it in those conferences out there. Football is not a way of life on the West Coast. The West Coast has too many entities that, distract people.
Yeah.
But in the South, where football is a way of life, just like when the young man Jordan McNair lost his life in Maryland last year, Charlton, the East and the Southeast, Charlton, is where football is a livelihood. It's a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Out on the West Coast, it's just something they do for fun. So they report on all the incidents that occur with athletes in this region of the country, Charlton, east of the Mississippi.
Yes.
Because people pay attention. Out on the West Coast, it's just something else that just happens.
Well, I think that can change with more exposure. There was a time when West Coast football was the number one thing, and that's mostly under the era of John McKay for USC. Also, when Terry Donahue was coaching UCLA and they were making Rose Bowl appearances, and then USC again under Pete Carroll. Don James with the Huskies. I think it may come back. Everybody has their time in the sun, and right now it seems to shine on the SEC. But I want to touch on one more thing and get your thoughts on it, because we can't assume that everybody knows to do the right thing. We're human, and sometimes we make mistakes. I would like to get from your opinion, because you played where it was, I think you played in single-digit temperatures, also triple-digit temperatures. So what advice would you give to athletes, whether it's high school, college, or pro, things that they can look at in their own bodies and not wait for some doctor to tell you how you feel, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's just being aware of yourself. You got to be a finely tuned athlete to compete at the highest level. You just have to pay attention to your own body symptoms. And back in the era when I played, they didn't have the medical technology that they have now. But, on a hot day, Charlton, I made sure I stayed hydrated. I made sure I cooled down as much as possible. We had the cold towel remedy, Charlton, where we put the cold towels on our head.
That's right.
Ice packs up behind our head.
Yeah.
These are the things you do to reduce your body temperature, Charlton. In the heat, that's what you have to do. The heat is what you got to worry about, not the cold. The thing about the cold, you'll find ways to prevent frostbite and things, Charlton.
Yep.
We use extra wrapping on our feet, Charlton. Actually, we use plastic bags inside of a pair of socks to keep the heat inside your hand. You wore the gloves to keep your tips warm on your fingers. But, you don't worry so much about the cold as you do about the heat. The heat is something that is hard to cool down from. You have this hot uniform on, you're wearing 25 pounds of equipment, Charlton.
Yep.
And that's just extra mass holding the body with heat inside your uniform.
Yeah, I know that. We all just got to, it's one thing to say it, but even young kids that are out running around and playing in the sun, I did that a lot when I was young. And you just feel invincible. It's always tragic to hear when anyone passes away.
Well, the biggest problem, Charlton, when you talk about these young kids and even the older athletes, they ingest too much sugar these days. I mean, we didn't have the sugar ingestion that they have in my era that they have today, but everything that you consume is loaded with sugar. Even Gatorade is loaded with sugar.
Yeah.
All these sports drinks are loaded with sugar. Kids are drinking this Red Bull stuff.
Yeah.
And Monster Energy drinks, which has too much sugar.
Way too much.
Mountain Dew is a soda, but it has more caffeine and sugar than any other soda out there.
Yeah.
So when you look at what young people are consuming, it's what's offsetting their body. When I was growing up, prior to practice, everybody took 2 salt tablet pills. Everybody.
Yeah.
They passed them out to everybody. These yellow tablets, they said, take 2 of these before practice. And that helped, keep you hydrated because you were going to sweat out so much you needed to consume the water, but you also needed the potassium in your system to help maintain your system.
Yeah.
To keep the balance going. So the simplicity of what was there when I was growing up versus the complexity now, all these commercials on television telling athletes how to improve themselves, Charlton, and they don't work hard enough to consume all these supplements that they're putting in their body.
Yeah.
And that causes a lot of physical problems.
Yeah, and I agree with you too. And just one more thing I was saying this because it's summertime and a lot of kids are out playing. They're trying to run up and, running heels like they're Jerry Rice, etc. And I do notice a lot of kids, if you look at the ingredients and what they have in these sports drinks, oftentimes you don't find anything healthy, but you'll find lots of sugar, lots of added salt, and sometimes just water. Plain water is the best thing that we can have, but they don't sell it fancy enough. I mean, there's different labels, but I just want to encourage people, and again, thoughts and prayers with the young man's family and just everyone, and please be aware. I want to just get on some baseball. I know yesterday we talked about Major League Baseball statistical leaders and the home runs with Mike Trout and Cody Bellinger out here on the West Coast, and then you think about what's going on in the pitching. It's a summer of closers. The Baseball Hall of Fame is headlined by 2 great relievers, Mariano Rivera of the Yankees, who finished with 652 saves. He had a 2.21 ERA. And if you can find, in your experience of watching baseball, have you ever seen a player that was so dominant? Because oftentimes Mariano was doing it in playoffs and even the World Series. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he's the modern era greatest relief pitcher that we've seen. I remember pitchers like Raleigh Fingers, Goose Gossage. They were great relievers years ago. But, what we saw Mariano Rivera do on the grandest of stages, Charlton, with the Yankees in New York. Not only in the playoffs and World Series and the regular season.
Yep.
You think about the number of saves that he, added up over his career. And going into the Hall of Fame, I mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And he did it with class and style. There was never any suspension talk with Mariano Rivera.
Nope.
He was a class and epitome of baseball. I mean, he's somebody that the president wouldn't want in this country because he came from one of those SO
countries, yeah.
But he lives in New York like the president does.
Yeah.
But he was class and character his entire career with the Yankees. I mean, and the Baseball Hall of Fame did him justice. They didn't make him wait 10 to 12 years to get into the Hall of Fame. They rewarded him for a job well done, Charlton.
Yeah, you think about him. I still think about Clemens. I think about Barry Bonds. And, of course, there are guys hitting home runs at the pace of those guys who did it back in the day under Barry and McGuire and Canseco and Sosa. They were doing it. But there's no talk of what they're putting. Maybe they should use butter on their skin like you told me to put butter. Would butter help baseball players, Big C? That make any sense?
Well, it might make the ball slippery. A lot of pitchers use substance. I remember Gaylord Perry was one of those pitchers that used substance that was quite similar to butter. A lot of pitchers felt to use illegal substance that was slippery like butter when they were on the mound.
Yeah, if you think it's butter, but it's not. It's chiffon. I remember that commercial back in the day. Also, when you think about Mariano Rivera, and you think about the managers that he played for, and then Steinbrenner with that ownership of the Yankees, sometimes you don't know how good something is until it's gone. But those eras when you could watch Mariano come up, he was like Barry Bonds coming to the plate. When Mariano was on the mound, you put down everything you were doing, and you had to watch Yankee baseball, even if you're a Red Sox fan. Big for your thoughts.
Well, when he came in, the game was always on the line.
Yeah.
And he was coming in to secure a victory for the Yankees, and he won more than he ever lost, Charlton, in his entire career. When he walked out on the mound, as a Yankee fan, you could have a sigh of relief knowing that the game was well in hand.
Yeah, that's always true. So really appreciate him, and he deserved it. I also want to jump across to Lee Smith in the National League. Now he's not as impressive, and it's almost embarrassing. It's almost like announcing a great receiver after you just talked about the great Jerry Rice. Whether it's Michael Irvin, no matter who it is, no one, even Randy Moss, they all pale to Jerry when it comes to touchdowns. Everybody has their own talent. But you look at Lee Smith in the National League, he finished with 478 career saves. When you think about that, that's a lot of saves, Big C. They could count on him coming in and getting the game for him. His ERA was not as good as Mariano Rivera, so if there's an induction, he might want to be announced at the end of it, not after Mariano gets up. But he had a 3.03 ERA over 18 seasons. But there was no one like Mariano. But Lee Smith, you can't hang your hat down when you have 478 saves. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Lee Smith's career. It was a shining career, Pelton. He wasn't always on a pennant team. He was a team. He spent most of his career with the Cubs. So, you think about how the Cubs struggled over those years, but Lee Smith was one of those players that the Cubs could always count on when they had a lead going late into a game at Wrigley Field, sitting there listening to the great announcer, during the game.
Yeah.
But Lee Smith was a dominant pitcher. I mean, he was a huge, hulking man on the mound, and he came in and he threw fire.
Yeah.
You think about if he could pitch in today's era with his size, Charlton, stature. Lee Smith, 6'4", 6'5", about 240 pounds coming off the mound. And, he had that rocket for an arm.
Yeah.
And he struck fear in players. And, like I said, you talk about his ERA, but you also got to look at the teams that he played for.
Yeah.
He wasn't in the pennant chase often in his career.
Yeah.
But he was a constant professional, and he delivered when called upon.
Yeah, it may not have the wins that you have of Rivera, but he does have what you need. And that's a guy who can get the ball across the plate. I look at Jensen right now for the Dodgers, and I know over the last couple of years, he's been one of those guys that was not Mariano Rivera, but he was solid. But he's been giving up a lot now. He's not a guarantee, no matter whether it's a playoff game or a regular season game, because he's been hit a lot. But I wanna just think about some of the greater pitchers back in the day, and then we're gonna get into some of the top guys today. But I think of a guy like Dave Stewart that played for the Oakland A's. He was always a guy that could throw strikes, and they didn't need that what do they call that, the CGI generated box to tell you if it was a strike. When Dave Stewart played, he was always throwing strikes. Catfish Hunter, you think about how he pitched back in the days. I know everybody has their favorite pitcher, but Roger Clemens, he's another guy. You didn't need that CGI generated box to tell you if they were throwing a strike or not. And I just want to get your thoughts on if you feel that those guys have the same type of attention that they deserve, like a guy like a Mariano Rivera. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you got to look at Stewart. Stewart's career wasn't lengthy enough. I mean, you saw him with a couple of bright years with the Oakland A's, but he struggled in other parts of his career. Charlton, he struggled when he was in Toronto. He struggled when he was with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So, he had a couple of bright years under Billy Martin. You look at Catfish Hunter. He had about a 7-year window as a dominant pitcher in the major leagues, starting with the A's and moving on with the Yankees before he had some shoulder problems. Roger Clemens had a very lustrous career, Charlton. He pitched multiple years with the Red Sox and the Yankees, and he was dominant all the times that he was on the mound.
Yeah.
The thing about pitching in baseball, you can have a couple of great years, but longevity is what you look at in a pitcher. A guy who has 4 or 5 great years, you're like, wow, what happened to him? You can think of Ron Guidry when he was with the Yankees.
Yep.
Guidry had a great run for 4 or 5 years. You think of Fernando Valenzuela when he was with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
A couple of, 4 or 5 years, had a solid career. But it's the guys who can get you that 12 to 14 years. You think about a Nolan Ryan, how dominant he was over time.
Yeah.
That's what it is in baseball. It's about time. You think about Tom Seaver, how dominant he was to become a 300-game winner. These are the things you're not going to get anymore in Major League Baseball. You can look at the power pitches that they have today. But you don't see anybody on the horizon that's, getting close to 300 wins. You think about CC Sabathia now with the Yankees.
Yeah.
He has the most wins of any active pitcher in the major league.
Yep.
But he's not going to get to 300. So those days, those bygone years of the dominant pitcher that you could go out there and throw on the mound every 4 to 5 days, Charlton, over a 15 to 20-year span and end up with 300 victories in his career, we're not going to see that anymore.
Yeah, and that's amazing when you can bring out those dominant players that we've heard in their Hall of Fame. It's almost impossible to say, who's the best of different eras, but we do know that there's a lot of guys that just earn their money, Big C. And in fact, when you look at some of the players today, and again, we'll talk about Curt Flood after we bring up some of the top pitchers today. Curt Flood is the reason people make so much money now. You think about Rue with the Dodgers. His ERA is only 1.78. We talked about Rivera. He was down in the twos. Scherzer for Washington, he's 2.3. And Morton from Tampa is 2.35. You look at Castillo from Cincinnati, he has a 2.41 ERA. And then Minor from Texas, he's 2.73 ERA. And ERA is one thing. But oftentimes, as you mentioned, and I think Rivera really takes a top notch over some of these other players, Big C, is he played for the Yankees. And the Yankees were always at least winning or competing for a championship for most of his career. So that gives him an advantage. But I think about Rue for the Dodgers, Kenyon Rue. That guy is amazing. But to keep a 1.78 ERA throughout his career would be pretty difficult, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, right now, you think about those ERAs that you just mentioned. It's phenomenal when we think about record home runs being hit this season in the major leagues. And those pitchers are being able to keep the ball in the ballpark. So what they're doing is outstanding and astonishing just on itself, having ERAs that are under 2.5 in most cases. Yeah,
that's true. And obviously, if you can get anything under the 2 and you can hold up, that's Hall of Fame material. Scherzer, for Washington, I remember there was a time, you look at guys like Strasburg, you look at Scherzer, Verlander, there's just a Kershaw. A lot of these players have a big name, but I wonder if at the end of their career, we'll talk about them the way we do, some of the past players that we mentioned. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, everything is a time era when you look at sports, and right now, no one has had the longevity or production in their career to even warrant talking about the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
You have to get to a certain crescendo in your career. I mean, it's really nice to be able to have a World Series title to go along on that mantle. I mean, we look at somebody like Verlander. Verlander is one of those pitchers that we can think about potentially being in the Hall of Fame eventually. There's several pitchers out there that are dominant in the major league, Charlton, but no one has put together the longevity yet to be considered for Cooperstown.
Let me get your thoughts on a big pitcher from the West Coast for the San Francisco Giants. Think about Madison Bumgarner. He throws like lightning at times, and other times he's not quite on. But last night he shined. Last night as the Giants topped the Mets. You think about what they did for the 6th victory in a row for the Giants, a team that was really going nowhere. And you think about it. They went 16 innings last night. Bumgarner with 9 innings with his last 5 starts. He's 5-0 with an ERA of 1.55. Now, we were talking about, not we, but the Giants were talking about maybe dealing this guy because he's making too much money. Now he's 1.55 ERA, and the Giants are still trying to trade him. Now they're in the pennant race. I would say money's money, but don't trade this guy if his ERA is under 2. That make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, it's not just about the ERA. I mean, the Giants, in baseball, if you take a 10-game stretch, Charlton, you go 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, you're back in any divisional race at that point. And that's what the Giants have done. They've gone 6-0 in their last 6 starts. Baumgartner's gone 5-0 in his last 5 starts. So in that last 5 starts, his ERA has been 1.55. So he has become, once again, that dominant pitcher that we had seen when the Giants were winning the World Series.
Yeah.
And maybe the trade talk motivation got to him.
Yep.
You start telling somebody they got to change their address and zip code.
Yeah.
They start looking at all the stuff they got in the house and say, do I really want to leave here?
That's true, too.
It becomes motivation. You motivate professional athletes in many ways.
Yeah.
The fear of leaving your comfort zone is always a motivator for a professional athlete. Once you get comfortable at times, guys sign these big contracts, it's like, oh, I got it all. But Baumgartner's only 29 years old.
Yeah.
It's not like the Giants cannot rebuild around him. He still has another 5 to 6 solid years in the major leagues, and that's one of the things the Giants have to look at. If we deal this guy, what can we get back? He's only 29. He's not 35. He's 29 years old.
Right.
This is the same thing the Detroit Tigers did when they got rid of Scherzer. We see what he's done with the Nationals. We see what Verlander has done with the Astros. And so the Giants are in that same situation. Do we get rid of the ace of the staff, saying that we're going to rebuild this ball club? And the ace is not old, you know, and so you can still bring in enough of the young arms. You got to find some position players. And you think about it, he wasn't even a talk of the game last night, you know, because when the Giants won 3-2 in the 16th inning, he had been in and out of the shower already, probably halfway home at that time.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, he got him to that point pitching 9 solid innings.
Yeah, he is already out of the shower and maybe watching some other things going on, Big C, in the sports world. I do want to just look at some of the schedule tonight. It's a nice full schedule. It's going to be hot in some of these ballparks, Big C. Colorado's at New York Yankees. Games already underway. Boston at Baltimore. Philadelphia at Pittsburgh. You have Chicago, the White Sox, at Tampa Bay. They'll be happy that Tampa's playing in the Dome because of the heat index on the East Coast, Big C. Kansas City at Cleveland, and then Toronto at Detroit. St. Louis is at Cincinnati. And then you look at Washington at Atlanta. Atlanta got hat last night. I know we were talking about how great that young team is. They were right on the heels of the Dodgers. But last night, they got beaten up pretty good in their own ballpark, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, they've given up a lot of runs in the last couple games. They've gotten so far behind. They struggle in the late innings to come back. But, you know, they spotted the opposing team too many runs to even get back into consideration.
Yep.
So this is one of the things with young teams that you have, is that you sit back and you start living on your laurels. You start reading the press clippings. You're enjoying the interviews that you're getting. But you still got to go out and play the game every day.
They got to play it.
They had the luxury of having a pretty decent lead in their division. They still have a 6-game lead in their division. But just think about it, they'd have won the last 2 games and have a double-digit lead right now.
Yeah, that's true.
They've lost 2 games to division foes in the last 2, and they've given up 30 runs in those 2 games.
Well, you know, we're going to have a game down in Texas at Houston. In Houston, I'm sure Texas, they're all happy that they're playing in a dome down in Houston. You have Oakland A's at Minnesota. Milwaukee's at Arizona, another place you need to have a dome stadium. And then you have Miami at the Dodgers. The Dodgers went on an East Coast swing, and they looked impressive other than giving up that 2 runs in the 9th with Jensen. I mean, you just got to think about the Dodgers they're way out in front. You're not going to win every game, but this is a series they should take against Miami. Dodgers, looking forward to them at least in the NLCS, maybe the World Series. The LA Angels at Seattle, and then the New York Mets at San Francisco. In a makeup game, you have San Diego at Chicago. I want to just touch off as we close out on sports, and I want to mention it at least on a weekly basis, Curt Flood, because I know a lot of young people, they say, well, who's Curt Flood? But they'll know about a guy signing a $430 million contract, and Mike Trout, or Machado signing $300 million, or Harper $330 million. They know about those guys, but they don't know why. Curt Flood's the reason why. African-American man. A lot of people just need to know about Curt Flood. That's why I love talking about Curt, Big C. If Curt had the same type of respect that we give other players today that maybe take a stand for something, like Megan Rapinoe's going to be on CNN with an interview with Van Jones this weekend. I would love to see Colin Kaepernick there because he was Megan Rapinoe before Megan Rapinoe was Megan Rapinoe. If that make any sense. Your thoughts on Curt Flood?
Well, you know, he was a tremendous guy for the world of sports, Charlton. When you think about what he sacrificed his career, because he understood the inequality that athletes had during that era, and mainly minority athletes, Charlton, but his fight was for all athletes. And it's amazing how African-American athletes, for the most part, have had to be the trailblazers to allow others to make money. And no one looks at it from that perspective. When we think about the NBA, Spencer Hayward opened the door for the early entry by suing the NBA in an antitrust situation and won, an African American. Nobody else would go out on a limb and put their career out like that, Charlton, thinking that they could be banned forever. We saw Colin Kaepernick fight for social injustice. Everybody said he was anti-American because he didn't want black people to be discriminated against.
Yeah.
And the president is talking about discrimination every day. Curt Flood said, hey, we don't have equality of pay. We don't have the right to move when we want to move and find the best place for us to play.
Yeah.
He fought for all baseball players and all professional athletes to have free agency. You think about the NFL. In the NFL, you did not have free agency until 1986.
Wow.
You did not have the right to change a team unless you got cut and another team picked you up. You couldn't play out your contract and then just go to another team freely. Free agency did not exist.
Yep.
African Americans have made the trail easier for everybody to travel down over the decades in playing professional sports.
Yeah.
And no one gives them credit for it. There's no plaque saying African American athletes created this opportunity. There's no Hall of Fame speech saying African Americans created this opportunity for me to have this.
Yeah.
They have not. They've gone completely silent about the sacrifices and inroads that they have made in professional sports. Curt Floyd was a trailblazer.
Yeah.
He created the free agency for everybody.
Yeah, he sure did. He did a lot. It's like the Wizard of Oz. You ever see the Wizard of Oz? And Dorothy's was like follow the yellow brick road. I wonder if that yellow brick road was actually made of butter, Big C. Did you ever think about that? Your thoughts?
Well, they didn't slip down, so it might not have been anything.
Well, we love talking about sports. Sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. For every athletic and sporting event, you need to find out what's going on, not just in sports, but also in real life, and that's why we bring you Big C Sports. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, and after we do that, we're going to come back and talk about some golf across the pond, and then we're going to close out with some talk about NFL football. We hope that you'll come back and join us as we talk more about Big C Sports. All right, we are back on the Big C Sports Show, talking Big C Sports worldwide. And you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, in the iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. If you have Yahoo, you can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. You can also just Google it on all of your platforms. If you have Xfinity Comcast on television, you can follow Big C Sports on television through Xfinity Comcast. And I love this app by Alexa. When you go home or on your tablet, just say, Alexa, play Big C Sports podcast, and you'll hear the show with the commercials come up. You'll hear me say, welcome to the show, and then I'll introduce Big C, and he'll come on and do his thing. So we thank all of our sponsors for their support, and we really look forward to more happening with Big C Sports. I want to just touch on what happens across the pond today. Obviously, we knew it was going to happen yesterday. The reason a lot of people tune in for golf, at least older people, people above 40, Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson. Well, they decided they didn't want to play anymore at Big C. So if you decide you don't want to play anymore in golf, you just don't practice as much as some of the young players. And I think that's what's going on with the great Tiger Woods. He's out of there. And I think also when him saying he just wants to go home, well, I just want to get your feeling. You already talked about Tiger. Tiger's changed his mentality, and he doesn't care about it as much as he used to. Your thoughts?
Well, I stated it clearly yesterday. Tiger can't win right now. Tiger is not competitive right now. Tiger is not willing to put in the work right now. And any professional athlete who is not willing to put in the work is not going to win, is not going to be competitive.
Yep.
As much as Tiger Woods' namesake means something to everybody when a golf tournament comes on, he's not a threat to anybody to push them for the tournament.
Yeah.
Tiger wants to pick and choose and say, okay, I'm just going to play these events because they pay the most money and they have the most allure to them, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's not enough. You think about, we just saw Wimbledon. Think about if Djokovic said, okay, I'm only going to show up for the majors.
Yeah.
I'm not going to show up for the other tournaments. I'm only going to show up for the 4 Grand Slam events out of the year.
Right.
You think he would be the dominant tennis player that he is?
No.
If Nadal only said, I'm going to show up for the 4 majors.
Right.
Roddick, even Serena, if she's got to play more tournaments.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods had spoiled everybody just by showing up for the majors.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods' body and mind is not what it used to be. 20 years ago.
Yeah.
15 years ago. And so for Tiger Woods to be competitive, he would have to do more. But Tiger's already said, I'm not willing to put in the work to go out there and play the game of golf the way I did 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I just don't have the time. My main focus is my life. You know, we talked about that with LeBron James. Everybody said, well, he's going to the Lakers, but he has all these outside interests, so, you know, his game of basketball is going to suffer. No, not with LeBron.
Yeah.
His game is still consistent. He's just developed his life after basketball while he was playing basketball.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods has done the same thing. He's developed his life outside of the world of golf. He's a dad, you know, and being a dad, you want to spend time with your children. Tiger has found that his children, the time with them is more precious than the galleries at a golf course, Charlton.
Yeah.
And I respect Tiger for that aspect. So everybody who thinks that Tiger is going to go out there and be competitive, no, look at yourself. Look at your kids. Do you look the same way you did 15, 20 years ago? No, you don't. You just don't. You get a little lazy as you get along in that relationship. You're like, I don't have to do the things I used to do to keep it where
Right.
it used to be.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Look at Tiger Woods' golf game just like you would at your marriage.
Yeah.
Do you look the same way that you did 20 years ago? Does your wife look the same way you did 20 years ago? Do you do the same things physically that you did 20 years ago? No, you don't. So Tiger's not going to do that, and Tiger's not going to go out and blow the world of golf away anymore. He might win another major, Charlton,
Yeah.
over the next 5 years, but that's it. You can only expect Tiger to win one. If he gets two, I mean, it's going to be snowing in July.
It might be snowing in July, or it could just be loaded, Big Z. But it's all fair and love and war. Phil, you know, I'm not really disappointed when I don't see Phil, because Phil has I think, one top 10 finish in the last 20 tournaments. So Phil obviously has made that exit sooner than Tiger. I still see that Tiger will get 18 majors somehow, and before he gives it up. I think he still has some golfing in him, and it's just going to happen in time. But when you think about the guys today, I still like Koepka. He's like the new Tiger Woods, and people are still thinking that Spieth is going to be. Spieth never really became who they wanted him to become. So with a $10.7 million purse, you have J.B. Holmes. He's leading the pack. He's -8. Lowry is -8, tied for first. And then you have Fleetwood. He's -7. And Westwood is -7. And then Smith is -6. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if you have coming up on Sunday that Koepka is going to be someone that's chasing down the lead. Because if someone can win this tournament, you might win it at 10 or 11 under, Big C. He's halfway there. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, I like what J.B. Holmes is, Charlton. I mean, he's been competitive. I mean, his best finish in a major was in 2016. He did it twice at the U.S. Open and the Masters, where he finished third. So he is primed for this golf course, Charlton. It's one of those with the narrow fairways. You got to keep the ball in the fairways.
Yep.
One of the problems with the big young guns over time is that they try to overpower the ball. That was Rory McIlroy trying to overpower the ball. It's very windy over in Ireland.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to play into the wind, Charlton, and know where that ball is going to land. And this is what JB has done. You know, he's played consistent golf. And if you play consistent golf for 4 rounds, you have a chance to go home with the championship.
Yeah, it's always important. I think golfers have the ability to play. I think Jack won his last major. I want to say he was 46. I believe he was. I might be wrong about that. But could you imagine if you're a football player or a baseball player? And I know we had George Blanda. I think he was 43. There was a baseball player that reached about 48, maybe 50. Don't remember his name. But could you imagine if golfer can still have a horrible year or two, and when you're 40, you can still talk about winning? That doesn't exist in other sports, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, baseball has had many players that play into their 40s, Charlton, before they left the game. It's not uncommon because you don't have a huge contact sport that you're dealing with. It's just about muscle memory, just like golf is. It's about muscle memory, the thing about golf. You have to make adjustments with your game as you get older. Tiger Woods was one of those.
Yeah.
He no longer drives the ball 320, 330 yards down the fairway. He likes to get 270 to 290 out of it. You have to play it straight, though, Charlton, and in golf you can do that.
Yeah.
You don't have the physical problems that you're going to have in other sports. But your body does get older and tired, and that's what we've seen with the older golfers. It's like in all sports. I mean, no one is saying baseball is boring now.
Right.
They had the second largest number of young players. This was the second youngest All-Star game that they've had in baseball history.
Yeah.
No one said that baseball is boring. They're having a record number of home runs.
Yeah.
When you look at golf, it was just Tiger's name that mesmerized everybody for a decade and a half on the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
Tiger's name still mesmerizes people, but other people are out there playing golf, and they're on top of the game.
And they're playing on top of the game, and they're hungry, too. And it's just a matter of how you get there with the timing. Give me your feeling on the Kansas City Chiefs and the news today with the NFL and the Chiefs that they're not going to suspend Hill. I think that, the kid's arm didn't break itself, just like things don't break themselves. And they said they didn't have enough evidence. Well, I don't know how much more evidence they need, but I just want to get your thoughts on it, because if he didn't do it, what a shame to be accused of that, but the arm didn't break itself, Big C. Your thoughts?
Okay, what did you have in the Ray Rice incident?
Video.
Yeah. What did you have in the Kareem Hunt incident? Video.
Yep.
What did you have on Ezekiel Elliott? Video.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you have on the James Harden? You had photographs.
Yeah.
And an audio. So the thing with Ezekiel Elliott, by the time that this incident came out with the child, and I don't know, and I'm not going to accuse anybody.
With Hill.
Well, Hill. But I'm not going to accuse anybody. We had this conversation a week or two ago, Charlton, about why does the NFL convict people when they have not been convicted civilly?
Right.
This is what the NFL has to be cognizant of. If you don't have a civil conviction, you haven't been charged civilly, why does the NFL come in and convict you?
Yeah.
And I look at the allegedness of the tapes that were made. I mean, how does this get out? Why are you leaking these tapes out? Why are you putting this out? Are you trying to hold somebody ransom, blackmail, whatever you're trying to do? I don't know whether it was a girlfriend or one of her friends that put the stuff out.
Yeah.
But when you start doing these things like that, who did it? Both sides were accusing the other side.
Yeah.
That's what it came down to. I like the stance that the NFL took this time. And look, you got to have evidence of somebody.
Yeah.
We saw Ezekiel Elliott in multiple incidents of things that he was doing, getting suspended.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston had a history, and even his teammates told on him about the incident in Arizona.
Yeah.
So the thing about it, as an NFL player, you have an opportunity to be a mean-spirited person, a bad person,
yeah,
making millions of dollars. Otherwise, if you want, you still also have the opportunity to be a Boy Scout,
yeah,
and make millions of dollars. NFL players get into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. And we put too much damn focus on the guys who are acting negatively.
Yeah.
You think about, here's a league with thousands of players. But we talk about all the time, everybody in the media, there's about 40 players that everybody talks about all off-season.
Yeah.
Whether it's drug suspension, whether it's DUI, whether it's domestic violence, or whatever it is. Why is all the damn focus put on these players?
Yeah.
And instead about the players who are doing the right things, going out and doing community service, helping people in times of hardship, going out where there's devastation, where there's tornadoes, where there's floods, and where there's hurricanes.
Yeah. We're
putting all this attention on somebody who's allegedly committing a criminal act. Americans become sickened, just like the president. They're sickened about hearing about negativity.
Yeah.
And the NFL is too good of a league to sit up and harp on all the negativity, and it's minimal. When you look at the percentage of players that are dealing in these negative lifestyles versus the players who are doing everything right. When was the last time all the media outlets wanted to sit up and talk about the feel-good stories of the players in the NFL? They don't do it.
Yeah.
They harp on the negativity.
Well, that's part of it, and I know there's two sides to every coin. I've been accused of things that I did not do, and it's not a good feeling, and it's nice to have vindication. But like anything else, you just got to have the chance to go forward in life. Not everybody's going to like you no matter what you do. I want to just touch on something here, because in the NFL, and again, for the player that passed away from heat stroke, the ex-Giant player, I just want people to stay hydrated and just know that we got to do certain things. There's certain things we got to do, and that's make sure you know how your body feels. I remember there was a time with training camps opening up now and being around sports almost all my life, people would say, you got to want it more. You got to work harder. Push yourself. Push yourself. No, don't do that. Make sure your body feels good. With the NFL set to open training camp next week, 5 teams are changing quarterbacks already. The Denver Broncos, Joe Flacco, that has that Super Bowl victory when the lights went out down in New Orleans. And I want to get your thoughts on Joe Flacco. And there's 4 more quarterbacks I want to bring up and get your thoughts on them. The Washington Redskins replacing Case Keenum for Haskins now. I think he's going to be solid out of Ohio State. Miami, Josh Rosen, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Which one will that be? Rosen couldn't really. I think there was a game in Arizona last year. Rosen only had 100 yards passing in the entire game. Jacksonville, you look at the Jaguars. Nick Foles, he's going to be doing his thing. Coming off of a Super Bowl 2 years ago with the Philadelphia Eagles. And then everybody's can't-miss kid, Kyler Murray out of Oklahoma. He's going to have a lot of pressure on him this big. See your thoughts.
Well, when you look at all those quarterbacks, I mean, each one of them has an opportunity to do something good. You know, Joe Flacco has the most experience of all that, having a Super Bowl title when he was with the Ravens. We saw what Denver did for Peyton Manning's career when he went to Mile High City.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of medicinal things out there in Denver that can help people.
Butter. It's called butter, Big Z.
Flacco will have access to all of that legally.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I also look around at the rest of the quarterbacks out there, Kyler Murray, a bona fide rookie, you know, in Arizona, you know, Josh Rosen getting a new lease on life in Miami. Can he beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Yeah.
If he can't beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick, then he was a bust overall, being the number 10 pick last year with the Cardinals, and that's the major reason why they traded him.
Yeah.
You look at Dwayne Haskins and Case Keenum. Case Keenum couldn't get it done in Denver last year. Now he's there pushing Dwayne Haskins in Washington for that starting position.
Yeah.
So when you look at these teams changing quarterbacks, hoping to get the best. Nick Foles, just like Joe Flacco, has a Super Bowl title going to Jacksonville. The one thing he has in Jacksonville, just like you look at Joe Flacco, they both have tremendous defenses.
Yeah.
And if they can find a way to get some offense from either one of those quarterbacks, Charlton, both of those teams are primed to be in the playoffs.
Give me your thoughts on, and we know if you ask this question for any, say, a veteran quarterback, you're successful when you make the playoffs. Playoffs, yeah, we talk about playoffs. And if you look at Murray, he could have played for the Oakland A's. And there are so many people, I mean, pundits that say they do football for a living. They were saying this guy should play defensive back. They were saying you don't put a lot of money into him. He might be a better wide receiver. They were saying all those things. But the Arizona Cardinals, they decided to make him the number 1 pick in the entire NFL. So the pressure's on him because the media is going to be against him, and you know that. Because a lot of these guys, if he comes out and has a good season, which to me means if he can win 5 or 6 games, that to me that'd be good because he's still got to learn his ropes in the NFL compared to how bad they were last year. But what do you think he has to win? And of course it's the whole team. But what does he have to do, in your opinion, to make people shut up and realize that they were wrong and come out and say, you know what, I was wrong on this guy, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the biggest thing, Charlton, is he has to stay healthy. He's going to need some help from his offensive line. There was shambles last year. He has David Johnson back at running back. He has Larry Fitzgerald teaching the ropes at wide receiver. They drafted a couple of young rookies, Charlton, that are going to grow up with Kyler Murray there in Arizona. I think Cliff Kingsbury, when you look at this offense that he's going to run, they're down in Arizona.
Yeah.
If this offense can click and he has the quarterback to make it click, this K-Gun offense that he's looking to run, I mean, it's going to be remnants of what you saw in Buffalo with Jim Kelly and quarterback and Warren Moon when he was in Houston.
Yeah.
Similar types offenses, Charlton. If they can get that spread offense working in Arizona, they're going to have some range going out there in the NFC West. And as you said, if Kyler Murray can win 6 to 7 games as a rookie, then he's totally successful. He and Cliff Kingsbury, there'll be a lot to build on out in the desert.
You know, speaking of if he can win 6 games, 7 would be amazing. 6, I could expect him to get 6. They're in a division where they're going to beat the 49ers mostly twice if they can do that. But this kid in high school, he was 40 wins and 1 loss in high school down in Texas. I think he played at Allen High School down in Texas. They have a $60 million stadium for a high school program. That's amazing. But 1 loss in his entire, high school career in Texas, won a state championship. And then at Oklahoma, I believe he only lost twice, and that was a game to Texas in the Red River Showdown. and that was an overtime game. And then they lost the game to Alabama in the playoffs, but they outscored Alabama the last 3 quarters. So if this kid has only lost 3 games since he started playing high school football, it would be culture shock for him to lose, 10 games this year. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, in the 2 college games that he lost, Charlton, he put up 80 points in those 2 games. So, it wasn't because of his lack of effort. It was, he needed a little defensive help in those games. So Kyler Murray has all the tools. I don't think that he'll be daunted by the move to the NFL. I mean, we saw the success of Baker Mayfield coming out of that same Lincoln Riley offense at Oklahoma. Kyler Murray just needs a little support cast. I mean, that's any quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
There's always pressure being the number 1 overall draft pick in the NFL. How will things pan out? You're under the spotlight from everybody. And being a diminutive size that Kyler Murray is, it's even more of a spotlight. Everybody's worried about, can he take a hit? Can he survive? Well, he survived every year that he's played thus far.
Yeah, he really has. I look forward to him to have a great year. And the fact that they play in a controlled environment in the Dome down in Glendale, Arizona, I think he's going to have a dynamite season. Just need their defense to step up. When you think about the last time we talked about Curt Flood for baseball and how people can make more money now because of Curt Flood. Well, NFL's the same. You have 3 quarterbacks, Big C, that sign new multi-million-dollar contracts going into training camp this year. A guy that reminds me of Murray is Russell Wilson. He played baseball and also football. And when you look at in college, and now you look at what he did for Seattle Seahawks, signed that mega contract. Big Ben Roethlisberger, who wanted to quit a couple years ago, he signed a nice deal. And Carson Wentz, who hasn't stayed healthy, not even in college, he signed a big deal. So maybe the past doesn't matter when it comes to Wentz. But give me your feeling on which one of these guys will have the better season and which one is under the most pressure. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is twofold when you look at that. When you look at Seattle, they're rebuilding.
Yeah.
They got rid of a lot of Russell Wilson's weapons. So, you're going to have to have some people step up, especially the rookie receiver, DJ Metcalf, out in Seattle.
Yeah.
The running game is going to have to be more solidified to help Russell Wilson out. I mean, he's been the straw that has stirred the drink in Seattle for the past 3 years. Everybody talked about the Legion of Boom defense. No, it was Russell Wilson getting Seattle through. I look at Pittsburgh and Ben Roethlisberger. There are no more killer bees out in Pittsburgh.
Right.
There's only one bee left.
Yeah.
That's Ben. Everybody, Brown and Brown, they're gone.
Yeah.
And it's all on Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
So he has no excuses this year in Pittsburgh. He can't say that there's a distraction because Bell won't be there, Brown won't be there.
Yeah.
Then we go down and we look at Wentz. He doesn't have Nick Foles looking over his shoulder anymore.
No.
He got Nate Sudfeld now as a backup quarterback, and everybody was like, "Who's Nate?" Well, he came out of Northwestern.
Yeah.
So that's where it's from.
Yep.
But Carson Wentz is going to have to find a way to stay healthy. He can't take chances this year running around with the football. He's just going to have to be a pocket passer and get rid of the ball. I mean, he has all the tools and credentials, but I see more pressure being on him this year than the other quarterbacks, because look at where Philadelphia has been over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
They won the Super Bowl. They beat the Patriots 2 years ago. They were Alshon Jeffrey's drop pass from beating the Saints in the playoffs.
That's right.
So this is a team that Carson Wentz now has under his control and tutelage. And he struggled last year prior to getting hurt. The Eagles would not have made the playoffs if Carson Wentz hadn't got hurt.
Yeah, I love this time of year. Football is starting to get some more attention, whether it's high school, whether it's college, whether it's the NFL. And I just love the fact that we're still right now in the middle of the baseball season where teams are starting to play like they want to get to a playoff position, and that makes it exciting, unlike the first month of the season. I also want to get your thoughts on when we look at Oakland Raiders. Will the Raiders be, you think about it, Big C, their biggest highlight, will it be when they're on HBO Hard Knocks? Gruden's come in and really changed the whole roster for the most part, at least for players that were Pro Bowl caliber players. But now he has a chance to do things his way, and $100 million, even if he fails. If the Raiders don't win more than 6 games this year, do you realize you got a bad bill of goods with Gruden, Big C, or will they make excuses for him? Your thoughts?
Well, because he was part of the media, there will never be any backlash against Jon Gruden. All the pressure would be deflected to his general manager, Mike Mayock. If the Raiders are not successful, they're going to say that Mayock didn't make the right offseason move.
Yeah.
They built in a safety net for Jon Gruden by hiring Mike Mayock, a guy with inexperience who was supposed to be this draft guru expert. And when you look at the players that he talked about you being drafted, look at who he drafted. Look at who he signed as free agents. That right off the bat let you know that Mike Mayock did not have his pulse on the NFL.
Yeah.
When you go out and you sign, Trent Brown, offensive tackle, they ain't just paying the guy $1 million. You pay him $17 million.
Yeah.
You signed Richie Incognito, who had not played since 2015, saying that he's better than anybody you got on the roster. You think about it. The guy been out of the league for a couple years,
yeah,
and you're going to say he's better than anybody you got on the roster?
Yeah.
That lets me know you can't evaluate talent.
Yeah.
Yes, you made a splash trade for Antonio Brown, but that's a receiver, and you have no running backs. You can't even sign your number one pick, Josh Jacobs, because you're crying over some money.
Yeah.
You pay an offensive tackle $17 million, and the guy was only a one-year starter in the NFL, and yet you don't want to pay your overall number one draft pick. So you tell me you got management problems in Oakland. So
right.
Hard Knocks might be their biggest highlight of the year.
Yeah, it might. Maybe they'll get more butter. They can get butter on those defensive players, or maybe they can slip some of the blocks. Big C, you taught that to me. Butter's good for everything. Shaving. Can you use butter for shaving cream? Maybe I'll try that next. I hope I don't break out. I know I love doing Big C Sports. We like to have a lot of fun going into this beautiful weekend, July. And it's just gorgeous. It's warm in California. It's hot around a lot of the country. Please stay hydrated. We hope a lot of people will. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the United States of America. In fact, the #1 network in the universe, an iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. If you have a television set, if you have Xfinity Comcast, you can follow Big C Sports on TV. If you have the app that I really love, it's called Alexa. When you go home, say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear me say, welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C, and he'll do his thing. And we thank our sponsors for their support. In the last 4 minutes, Big C, we were talking about football, and we talked about this just yesterday. And now it's in the paper today. We were talking about some of the great coaches and Bo Schembechler and guys like Woody Hayes and that Big Ten conference, and how they were just great coaches, but they never really could win national championships because we didn't have the same setup that we have. John McKay for USC Trojans, we know about him. Lou Holtz, Notre Dame, and now Harbaugh's had some comments today about everywhere that Urban Meyer has gone, whether it was Utah, Florida, or Ohio State. He left a little bit of residue behind him that put the program in some negative light, Big C. Does Jim Harbaugh have a right to talk about Urban Meyer, or can he talk about his own lack of success in the Big Ten? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, these are things just like with the president. You try to defer and distract.
Yeah.
And that's what, Jim Harbaugh has done.
Yeah.
He's deferred and distracted people from him not being able to challenge for the Big Ten title. He's had a problem with Ohio State. I think he lost Urban Meyer 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
He's had a problem with Michigan State in the Big Ten. So Jim has to win first before he wants to criticize somebody. You think about Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
Urban Meyer's had success at every level that he's been at.
Yeah.
Whether it was at Utah, whether it was at Florida, whether it was at Ohio State. What happens to successful programs? Everybody else wants to scrutinize and criticize.
Yeah.
That's what happens. When you're losing, nobody looks at what you're doing.
No.
You're trying to distract the alumni from, hey, we're not winning. Let's look at the other guy. He had to be cheating to beat us. Urban Meyer is no choir boy. I don't think there's a coach in college football that is a choir boy.
Right.
Maybe David Shaw out at Stanford because he has to have guys, academically eligible before you can sign them to a scholarship.
Yep.
So unless you're at a high-end academic institution and you're not at one of those schools that have paid players money, don't throw stones at somebody else's house because, one of them might bounce back towards you.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. As a football coach, you should be spending any time talking about another coach and his program.
Yeah.
Everybody is going to be butthurt in this industry.
Yeah.
Because they're losing. And when you're losing, you got to tell somebody the reason why you're losing is the other guy didn't play fair.
Yeah.
Not that you're not better than him. You
Yep.
got to look at the student athlete, Charlton. What are the student athletes doing wrong? Because you're taking a jab at the student athlete when you talk about that. You're not taking a jab at the coaches.
Yeah, that's true. So hopefully Jim can get Michigan. He has his own Wolverines to concern himself about. Don't want to draw, get claws on other coaches. Everybody has to win. Clay Helton has to win at USC. Chip Kelly has to win at UCLA. People got to win all over the place. And it's just great that we're on this time of season. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Jonathan, what I'm looking forward to is tomorrow, which marks the 50th anniversary of the lunar moon landing, Jonathan.
Yeah, yep.
The greatest feat in mankind in modern time. Neil Armstrong, first man to step foot on the surface of the moon. This was watched by everybody around the world who had a television, Jonathan.
Yeah.
And you talk about a moment in infamy that resonated in everybody's life, that everybody got an opportunity to see. I can remember it vividly on that black and white TV in my parents' home, sitting in the den. Everybody was circled around it.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm remembering most. Everything stopped at that moment. The world of sports, the world of everything in America and the world stopped as Neil Armstrong took that first step on the lunar surface 51 years ago tomorrow.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, and you can make that leap every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.